The NFL season has come down to its final week. Week 18 will make or break a couple of team seasons and decide the playoff order and of course the draft order as well. And because there's so much going on with some teams trying and some teams not, it's going to be one hell of a smorgasbord. Let's dive right into the action, and I'm going to give you my breakdown and predictions for all the games. Starting off on Saturday, where we're going to have the Browns taking on the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are trying to clinch their division, and they can by getting a win here. And they're playing a Cleveland team that, yes, beat them the last time they played, but could also be without Jameis Winston as he's nursing that injury, and I'm sure the Browns want their tank commander Dorian Thompson-Robinson to go out there and lose for them one more time so they can potentially draft their quarterback of the future. There's just too much on the line here for Baltimore. The chance to clinch the division, get the number 3 seed, get a first game at home to start off their playoff run. This is just too good to pass up on. The Browns are absolutely terrible. You've seen the difference with DTR in the game. He is horrendous. This game should be over by halftime as the Ravens pound down on this team, no problem, and completely destroy them offensively. At the other Saturday game, the Steelers are hosting the Bengals in primetime, and this one could be pretty huge too. First and foremost, if the Ravens were to somehow, someway lose their game, the Steelers could clinch the AFC North with a victory here. That would be a massive swing and give them a chance to host a playoff game. Aside from that though, they want to get the highest seed humanly possible here. The Chargers are breathing down their necks. They can't afford to give in. They cannot lose this game, because you want to have the 5 seed. The Texans have been mediocre this season, and getting a chance to play them in the first round could be a great opportunity for this team to finally make it past the first round for the first time in a very long time. But on the other side, the Bengals are fighting for their lives. They need to win this game if they want even the slightest glimmer of hope of making the playoffs. Part of me thinks that the Steelers would take great satisfaction in beating the Bengals and eliminating one of their division rivals, but I'm actually rocking with the Bengals to win this game. They're playing with a lot more desperation right now. Joe Burrow has had an absolutely insane year, and I just don't see him ending it on a loss in such sad fashion. If they're not going to make the playoffs, I firmly believe it will not be in his control. It'll be some other factor. I like the way the Bengals are playing right now. The Steelers haven't looked as sharp recently. I think this game favors Cincy as the more desperate team, as the more explosive offense, although just knowing that it's a divisional game, it could be up in the air. Speaking of big divisional games, how about the Panthers and the Falcons on Sunday afternoon at that 1 p.m. slot? This one's huge because Atlanta needs to win this game if they want to even have a slight chance of making the playoffs. They need a Tampa Bay loss as well, but they've got to take care of business first and foremost. And despite my doubts about Michael Penix, he didn't do that bad of a job against the Commanders. He didn't play great, but he didn't play terribly either. That game went down to the wire. It went to overtime. It was winnable, and against a Panthers defense that is arguably the worst in the league, or like bottom 2, he might be able to ball out and have his best game to date. But I don't know, for some reason I'm kind of feeling a Panthers upset here. It's that end of season chaos. It's not likely they're going to make the playoffs anyway, just because the Bucs have a pretty favorable matchup against the Saints, but I don't know, man. I just think that'd be very Falcons to have an opportunity to maybe make the playoffs just to choke to the Panthers. Bryce Young and the Panthers have played spoiler a couple of times this season. They've ruined a few teams, and after the beatdown they suffered against the Bucs, I believe in them to bounce back and get one last win to end the season and kick off their 2025 on an optimistic note. Then it's the Commanders versus the Cowboys, and generally speaking, not much on the line here, but the Commanders do want to win this game to guarantee the highest possible seeding in the NFC playoffs. Right now, they have a tiebreaker over the Green Bay Packers, and I'm sure they would like to keep it that way. And by winning this game, they can guarantee a 6 seed and avoiding the Philadelphia Eagles in the first round, instead going up against the Rams or the Buccaneers most likely. I'd say probably the Rams, we'll see, but either way, it's a lot better than playing the Eagles. And I like their chances of getting that win to guarantee that 6 seed. The Dallas Cowboys at this point are playing for nothing. They're completely destroyed. Their season's over. They just played absolutely terrible against the Philadelphia Eagles. And while some people's jobs could be on the line, I don't think it's going to be enough for them to win. Cooper Rush is on his last legs. The Commanders are starting to hit their stride again, and I would favor them greatly in this type of matchup. I think just beating Philly and then getting that big win over against Atlanta was everything they needed to believe in themselves again. And I think they're going to go out there and destroy the Cowboys this time, much like they should have the last time. Then it's the Bears moving on to play the Green Bay Packers, and like I was just saying about the Commanders, pretty important in terms of playoff positioning for Green Bay. If there's a world where somehow the Commanders lose, the Packers can surpass them with a win here, move away from a matchup against Philly potentially, and instead play the Rams or Buccaneers on the road, which looks a lot more favorable on paper. And I'd say regardless of what happens in that Commanders game, Packers should be taking care of business against the Bears. You've seen what the Bears have looked like over like the last month and a half. Ever since that game after Thanksgiving, it's been an absolute disaster for this team. They're like on the longest losing streak in the league at this point, and there's no evidence it's stopping anytime soon, just knowing that they dropped a measly 3 points against the Seattle Seahawks. There's a lot of questions the Pack have to answer, especially with losing to the Vikings yet again, but usually they take care of business against teams with worse records than them, and, they have a tendency to own the Bears, so they should be winning this one a lot more easily than the last meeting. But how about the Texans versus the Titans? This one you'd assume would go towards the Titans, or at least in theory, because the Texans in all likelihood at least should be resting their starters for this game. They're locked into the 4 seed after playing like garbage on Christmas. There's no chance for them at this point to improve their seeding. So unless they want to go out there and get some good reps in and risk injury, I'd assume they'll be playing their backups in this game. It's something to look out for because you never know. Maybe they want to get that extra practice in, but I would assume that Davis Mills and a bunch of the other crappy players are going to go out there and get their butts handed to them, or at least have this be a lot more of a competitive game than it should have been. Although then again, the Titans did beat the Texans anyway, even with their starters the last time. Honestly, for my hope as a Giants fan and hoping one of the QB needy teams ends up losing so we don't ruin our tank, I'm going to pick the Titans to win this game. Could go either way because the Titans are absolutely horrendous, but with a bunch of backups in there and, with just pride and everything, I guess, and the chance to sweep a season series, why not go with the Titans here? Speaking of meaningless games, how about the Indianapolis Colts versus the Jacksonville Jaguars? There's really nothing at stake here. The Colts should feel embarrassed after getting eliminated at the hands of the New York Giants. Maybe they could go out there, blow off some steam, and win this one. I don't think it makes much of a difference, though. No one's going to care about this game. The only thing the Jags would do by winning this game is further destroying their tank and moving away from the potential Travis Hunter sweepstakes, even though it already looks really bad for them in that regard. But regardless, Jaguars should be losing to the Colts as the less talented team. I don't really see a world where they can win this one unless Joe Flacco goes out there and plays like garbage, I guess. Not that it really matters. Again, this game is really, really stupid on paper. No one's going to be watching it, but I'll be going with the Colts for talent and talent alone. Next up on the 1 p.m. list, the Patriots are hosting the Buffalo Bills. And again, this is one where you kind of just have to take a look at the scouting report, see what's going on with the news heading into this game. Buffalo has nothing to play for. They're locked into the 2 seed, so in all likelihood, they will be resting all of their starters. Now, there is a possibility that on the other side of things, Drake May doesn't play either for the Pats. Maybe they understand that they have the number 1 pick locked up and they want to keep it that way. Wouldn't blame them at all there in that regard. It's kind of tough to say who ends up winning this one. The Buffalo backup still may be better than the garbage the Patriots put out there. I mean, maybe that's just me, but there's a world where Mitch Trubisky could win this game anyway. But something tells me that the Pats are going to go out there and win this one if Drake May plays. Maybe, again, I'm just coping as the Giants fan that desperately doesn't want to see his team ruin their tank, but I'm going to go with the Pats to win this game if Drake May plays. Now, if Jacoby Brissett plays, I think that friggin' Mitch Trubisky will probably end up outdueling him somehow. But I'm of the mindset that Drake May will go out there. He wants to get those last reps in and give the Patriots, I guess, a feel-good win as they head into the offseason, if you even want to call it that. I'm going with the Pats to win. Then it's the Eagles versus the Giants. Another situation where a 2 seed cannot improve or watch their positioning get destroyed in any way. The Eagles are locked into the 2 seed no matter what. Now, usually that would mean that they're just going to play all their backups, and that'll be that. Then the Giants ruin their tank more. But the Eagles are in a situation where they can get Saquon Barkley the record for the most rushing yards in a season ever. Just knowing that he's so close to it, and that he's playing a garbage team, and it's the team that let him walk in free agency, this seems like way too good of an opportunity to pass up. It's such a crazy milestone, and you know Sirianni, he loves to be petty, especially with the Giants. I think the Eagles are going to go out there, even if Hurts doesn't play, they're going to try early on to get Saquon that record. They're going to build up a little lead for themselves, and then by halftime, they'll just take away all of their starters. Maybe the Giants make it a bit of a game in the end, but the lead that the Eagles get early on will be too much to overcome in the end. I'm going to pick the Eagles to win this game based off of pettiness and pettiness alone. And because, again, as a salty Giants fan, I want to see us somehow salvage this tank. Ending the 1 p.m. games, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are playing the New Orleans Saints. Really big for the Bucs here. If they win this game or the Falcons loss, they clinch the NFC South. And if the Rams were to somehow lose, who we'll talk about in a little bit, they could actually move up to the 3 seed, which would be really, really massive. That could help them out a lot in their journey here. But regardless, they've got a pretty favorable matchup against the crappy New Orleans Saints with Spencer Rattler out there. The Saints are a broken team at this point, and even if they wanted to, they're not going to play spoiler. I mean, they couldn't even beat the Raiders. What chance do they have against the Bucs? Bucs by 1 million in this one. Baker Mayfield is going to dominate these guys and make the playoffs for a second consecutive year. Then, in the 425 slots, first we have the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Denver Broncos. And we're at two opposite ends of the spectrum here. You have the Chiefs, who have the 1 seed, who are going to rest their players. They're going to have a couple of weeks to chill, recover, and be prepared for whoever they face, while the Broncos need to win this game if they want to make the playoffs, because the Bengals, if they win that game against the Steelers and they lose, all of a sudden, they'll be out. And there's just no way the Broncos lose this game, right? I just don't see a world where the Chiefs' backups would do enough to beat the Broncos, who are so tough to play anyway. I mean, they barely beat them with all their starters in. So in theory, the Broncos should be winning this one without too much resistance in the end. Maybe nerves could end up affecting them, but I mean, come on, man. With how much is at stake here, with the level of talent they're playing against, they should be winning this game. And let's be for real for a second. So the Chiefs even want to entertain the risk of letting the Bengals into the playoffs? The only team, aside from Tom Brady-led ones, that have beaten the Chiefs in the playoffs? I don't think so. Then you've got the Chargers versus the Raiders, and the Raiders, they've already ruined their tank enough, and I doubt they're going to beat a Chargers team that technically still has a little bit to play for. Yes, they did clinch the playoffs, but as I was talking about before, if the Steelers were to lose their game against Cincy and the Chargers win, they can move from that 6 seed over to the 5, and that looks like a much more favorable matchup on paper. Playing the Houston Texans in the first round, that seems like a very winnable match with how they've been playing. So the Chargers should be going out there and playing super hard if the Steelers do end up losing. Now, if the Steelers were to win their game against Cincy, I don't know how that affects things. Maybe they'll just rest their guys, because I don't think that the 7 seed could surpass them. Like, even if the Broncos were to win and they lose, I think they still have the tiebreaker over them. So Chargers, you may have to look out for in this one. I would not bet on this game until you know what's going to happen with their starters. Assuming that they do play really hard, though, they should be beating the Raiders without question. They're just a way better team. But in a result where the Chargers don't play Herbert or any of their main guys, I think I might roll with the Raiders to win this one. I feel like that makes the most sense, right? So put an asterisk on this one. It's going to depend on what the Chargers decide to do. Next up, the Rams are hosting the Seahawks, and oh, what could have been. If it weren't for some dumb technicalities and tiebreakers, the NFC West could have came down to this last final game. Last time these two played, it was a banger, so it would have been sick. But no, unfortunately, the Seahawks are already eliminated before this game even gets underway, which means they don't have much to play for. They can't really sabotage the Rams since they won the division as well. So I don't know what to expect. Maybe they go out there and try just so they can have some kind of feel-good story here at the end of the year. But it kind of depends more on the Rams, you know? How much do they care about the seeding? Probably a lot, I would argue. I mean, getting the 3 seed is a hell of a lot better than getting the 4 seed and having to play either the Lions or the Vikings. You probably want to avoid that in the first round. So I'd assume the Rams go out there, kick some butt, and beat the Seahawks as they always do. Maybe it'll be close, just like the last time they played. But the Rams typically in the Geno era just own that guy, and I think it continues here. I'm going with the Rams. And then you've got the Miami Dolphins versus the New York Jets. And I mean, so long as Tua can be anywhere near healthy in this game, which I'm assuming he will be because playoffs are on the line, they should be beating the Jets here. The Jets are absolutely terrible. Aaron Rodgers looks horrid out there. I don't even know if that's the same guy anymore. I mean, genuinely, how he played against Buffalo is completely unacceptable. Couldn't put up any points at all in that game. They looked better with Tyrod out there, for crying out loud. Hell, for all we know, Tyrod may even start this game. I wouldn't be surprised. But regardless, I'm picking the Dolphins to win this game as long as Tua's healthy. Again, I'm assuming he will be. If Huntley plays, maybe it's a different story, but Jets are so fraudulent. Dolphins have playoffs on the line. Should be a pretty easy Miami victory, at least in my opinion. And in the final 4 p.m. slot, the Cardinals are playing the 49ers. This is meaningless football at its finest. Both of these teams eliminated from the playoff hunt. At this point, it's pettiness alone. And I kind of think the Niners are going to go out there and win this one for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, the Cardinals over the last month have just looked so horrid, and the Niners have shown us they're at least still trying. They're still fighting. They don't want the season to end on such a sour note. And let's be real, point number 2, Brock Purdy's trying to earn as big of a contract as humanly possible during the offseason, so he's going to ball out. Look what happened in that game against Detroit, you know? This dude's still playing his heart out, and against the Cardinals, a team that they previously lost to, I'm sure he's going to do more of the same, and I don't trust the Cardinals with how they're playing right now, man. It's really sloppy. They have a lot of questions to answer. The Niners are still, they still have those pieces in place at least, so I got San Fran winning this game, although you may argue the Cardinals are the real winners in this one, as it helps with their draft capital. And last, but certainly not least, the biggest game of the entire week, I would argue, the Vikings versus the Lions. 2 teams with 14 wins going head-to-head. Detroit trying to clinch the division. Minnesota trying to clinch the division. This is unprecedented. We've never seen something like this before, where 2 14-win teams are in the same division like this. Neither team clinching it still. It's crazy stuff, and honestly, this is going to be a tough one. The last time these guys played, it was very intense, but that was a long time ago. Since then, the Lions have sustained a lot of injuries. It is getting more and more difficult for them to keep up and to not give up these points. Their defense just isn't what it used to be because they're all freaking on injured reserve at this point. And the Vikings, they're starting to ball out again. They were slowing down a little bit, but they've picked it back up. Sam Darnold looks great out there. He just torched the Packers, and I kind of have this feeling the Vikings are going to win this game. The Lions have faced so many hardships. They have a great record, but for whatever the reason, things just continue to not go their way, and I feel like this would be very on cue for them. After how things have gone, after how well they've played, they still end up falling short. That is very Lions. So I'm going to go with that storyline and run with it. I am picking the Vikings to win this game. I've doubted them time after time this year, but this time I'm believing in them. I'm just worried, man. I'm worried the Lions are tired. I'm worried that they're just too banged up to keep up with these competent teams. They can't afford to keep having these shootouts. It's a play style that they know very well, and they can be successful. But how many times can you expect to win them, especially when you're playing a mean team like Minnesota that's moving the ball well, that has a stronger defense than you overall, at least in terms of the injuries not stacking up against them? This is going to be a tough one for the Lions to overcome. I've believed in them all season, but this is where I think they falter a little bit, and they end up going down to the wild card round, and we'll have to see how they respond to that adversity from here. It'll be a 50-50 match for sure. This one's going to be fun to watch, but I got my money on the Vikings. They've kind of felt like the team of destiny in a way. Every time you doubt them, they just keep coming back stronger. And with that said, that's going to wrap up my predictions for the week, and that's going to wrap up my predictions for this entire regular season. We're still going to keep going until the playoffs end, but I just wanted to thank y'all for sticking around and being so supportive during the regular season. It was awesome. We've got more videos to come. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.